this is the equivalent of grooming gang scandals for animals, the agony of these animals and their eyes rolling and struggling and falling down and getting back up again is just horrible.
We're eating beef that had TB.
Correct. Well, the issue is that what people are talking about as halal in this country is mostly what I would call pseudo-halal.
Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Nick Talks. This episode's returning and still amazing guest is Catherine Blakelock. How you doing, Catherine?
Good. Thank you very much, Nick.
There's several things at the moment that I need to find people to talk to about because of my knowledge is extremely low. One of them is about Sharia law. Another one would be about the Fabian Society. There's probably about a dozen things I'm thinking I need to find people on those topics because I don't know much about it. And one of them is halal and halal slaughter, kosher slaughter. And then I've been seeing your tweets, and I know that you're involved in the campaign on this. I thought it's time I spoke to Catherine. I need to educate myself a little bit more on this topic because, as you know, the Overton window is changing now. We can have these topics now. We can have these conversations. We'll still be called racist, but no one cares anymore now. So I want to expand my knowledge on certain things. So let's talk about halal. My first question is, we have laws in this country for cruelty to animals and the slaughter of animals. My understanding, tell me if I'm wrong, is we exempt halal and kosher from those laws. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. The issue is that most people don't really understand the law and don't understand what's going on. And the law that is there is not being implemented, it's not being regulated, it's not being controlled. So let's talk about the first point is
Well, before we jump into that, is halal and kosher basically the same thing, but for different religions?
um, they're similar, except that kosher does not, I think the actual cutting method is slightly different, although I'm not an expert on that. But the main difference is that the Jewish slaughter do not eat the back part of the animal from something like the 11th rib.
Right.
And also, the other thing is that the amount of, I think it's called shitsita. I can spell it, but I can't pronounce it. Schcita is Jewish religious slaughter. It is tiny, very tiny amount because there are many Jews who are not devout, and the Jewish population itself is very small.
So, in a nutshell, halal and kosher is the killing of animals following a religious code, which my understanding is they slit the throat while it's still alive, so it bleeds out while they're saying a prayer. Is that basically it?
Well, the issue is that what people are talking about as halal in this country is mostly what I would call pseudo-halal. It's not proper halal, it's not certified as halal, but we have a gap in the law which the supermarkets and the slaughterhouses have used because it's cheaper. And so real halal, and even for example, Rupert Lowe uses halal and religious slaughter interchangeably. 99% of people, in fact, I don't see anybody using the terms correctly. Halal itself is relatively a small amount of meat. It's not what you find in Waitrose. It will be what you find in a certified halal butcher's, and that is, as you described, an animal that has had its throat slit with no stunning or anesthetic or anything. It's conscious when that happens, and there's no stun. And that is quite small. I have been surveying supermarkets and I haven't found any of it in the main supermarkets. I mean, you can buy it. You would need to go to a halal certified butcher or you would need to go online and buy it. What is happening is what I would call pseudo halal or religious slaughter. It's the same process, except there's a stun. But the animal is fully conscious and the animal is recoverable. And the stun is a complete con. A complete con. It means double torture. So we go through the animals in turn. Chickens and turkeys are basically, as far as we can see from the evidence that we've been looking at with farmers and evidence that we have from people who know about what's going on in slaughterhouses, are not stunned at all. That they are literally just slung up and have their throats cut. Now, chickens and turkeys have very little blood, so they get their throats cut without a stun and they're probably dead in 30 seconds or so. The real problem is on lambs, sheep, and cattle. Sheep, and so what happens with the sheep and the lambs is that they're given an electric shock first. That's the stun. So they're electrocuted. That lasts for 15 seconds, but it takes them 2 to 2.5 minutes to die. And cattle are £1,000. An electric shock does nothing to cattle, nothing. It just hurts them. And then they have their throats slit. And they can take 4 to 4.5 minutes to die. So this is really where we're at. Now, I've spent a couple of months with another person. We've been surveying every single supermarket in Britain. We've got 4,500 samples of every single type of meat in 3 locations across the country. So what we wanted to show was that it's across the country, that it's every supermarket, from Waitrose to Iceland, from the cheapest to the most expensive. It makes no difference. And that everything you read about higher welfare is a con, literally a con. And so from my surveys, and I haven't released my website yet, but is that 70% of the meat sold in British supermarkets is religiously slaughtered. 70%.
Wow. And I take it they don't label any of this.
None of it's labeled. It's also ironically not properly halal either. If a Muslim really wanted to object, it's not halal. It's pseudo halal, as I said, religious slaughter. It's being done by people who are not Muslims. For example, there's the Two Sisters group, which is a massive group, is run by a Sikh guy called Balparian. He's managed to take over all the small slaughterhouses in Norfolk and across the country, including Bernard Matthews. All Bernard Matthews turkeys are halal. All New Zealand, or let's call it religiously slaughtered, all New Zealand lamb imported is religiously slaughtered. All the ready meals we can't trace at all. They have no slaughterhouse code on them. There's millions of those. Most of the foreign meat, and we found meat from Poland, from Hungary, from New Zealand, from Australia, from practically everywhere, and none of that is labeled at all. We only know the New Zealand because we can research into what New Zealand is saying, telling us. The slaughterhouse codes are on the meat, but it's very, very difficult to find which slaughterhouse that is. You can, but I've needed help to find it. They change the codes. They have overlapping jurisdictions. The Food Standards Agency refuses to release a list for the public good. of slaughterhouses. The only Facebook page that had slaughterhouse codes was taken down. Some slaughterhouses are mixed, but the worst egregious examples of this are, for example, Dutchy Original Organic Lamb is religiously slaughtered. It had its throat cut. Now, let me clarify one other thing. There's a lot of conversations with Waitrose that we found as well. And they'll say, oh, but it's stunned, so it's fine. Or it had a little prayer and it was stunned. Well, it's not the same as traditional slaughter. Traditional slaughter would be a bullet or bolt in the neck or the head. It is out. That's it. Non-recoverable, dead. I mean, boom, that's it. It's instantaneous, not an electric shock and then bleeding to death for 2.5 minutes or 4 minutes. So they will deny that they're selling halal. And technically, they're right, but they're wrong, because then you ask them, are you selling religiously slaughtered animals? And then, of course, they say, oh, but it's fine because it's stunned. And of course, it's not fine, because the law is very clear. It's either traditional slaughter or it's religious slaughter. Oh, sorry, it's Muslims for Muslims only, by Muslims for Muslims, to sell to Muslims, not to sell to the other 94% of the population.
There's a question jumping in my head now, which is this: why are they doing it?
Cheap money. Money, 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 money.
Well, that's exactly what I was going to say. The only reason businesses do things is for money. I'm presuming it's a lot cheaper to butcher animals like this than it is the more traditional way.
Lighter regulation.
Right. So it's all about money. So
no, it's less inspections.
Less inspection.
Supposed to have vets that they, if you say you're religiously slaughtered, and I imagine, this is the equivalent of grooming gang scandals for animals, you don't get inspected. People turn a blind eye. The Food Standards Agency does not want to produce a list because it might upset people.
Wow.
The other issue is this, and we've got a letter, and it gets even worse. You've got the certifying agencies, like, for example, Red Tractor, RSPCA approved, highest welfare standard. And then you've got people saying, hold on, I've got this Red Tractor, higher welfare, and it says it's been religiously slaughtered. How come? And then you will look at Red Tractor and they'll say, oh, we don't condone this. And yet they're approving it. So it's the regulatory factors, because slaughterhouses have been closing down. But let's take the Bulgarian. He started from 1992. He's worth over £1 billion now from chickens and turkeys. How? Nobody else can make money in chickens and turkeys or from slaughterhouses. Well, we know, because they have lighter regulation, they have bad conditions, they are using I actually came across this in Norfolk a long time ago, because there were all these immigrants coming in down a market, Thetford and Great Yarmouth, who were causing a lot of havoc, and they were working at the turkey factories. And originally, years ago, they used to use Portuguese workers, because it's a very unpleasant job killing turkeys in the cold freezer. And they run these factories 24/7, so you're often on night shifts and things. So they use Portuguese people who used to speak English. Well, Portuguese people who used to speak English, I imagine, got in shorter supply, and also could have better jobs, and also were probably more bolshy about their rights, right? Didn't want their passports taken away and things like that. So they started to import Bulgarian, Romanian, and Portuguese gypsies, or Roma, who didn't speak English at all. They would rent, and they still do, rent these old hotels in Great Yarmouth. I've tried to film about 4 or 5 years ago outside one, and we basically got told to leave, and we were only 2 blocks from the seafront. But they are bussing these people in, and they're importing them en masse that they were, during the EU, and then they were bussing them out to these turkey factories in the Norfolk countryside and the Suffolk countryside. So that was first how I came across it. But Bulparian has managed to take over all these traditional slaughterhouses like Bernard Matthew, Banham Turkey, Banham Poultry, and all these other ones, and then they get converted to religious slaughter. So yeah, and the ordinary horse slaughterhouses are closing down.
Wow.
The other thing that's happened, and this happens in a lot of law in this country, is overlapping jurisdiction. So nobody's controlling it. So we have the local authorities supposed to be regulating it, the Food Standard Agency supposed to be regulating, and DEFRA is supposed to be regulating it.
Which turns out and means no one's regulating it.
Well, yeah, and if you look at the Food Standards Agency, I Googled who runs the Food Standards Agency. I mean, it's like a pile of woke. They've got 8 out of 10 people, 8 out of 10 are women. Not that all women are woke, but they all had the right civil service background, and they had the nominal Hindu and the nominal, I don't know, excuse me, other person. So yeah, I think so they're all breaking the law, and that's why I hope to raise money for a judicial review, because we can never ban it at the moment, however much Rupert would like it. We saw one vote out of 650 in the Houses of Parliament to ban halal.
Yeah, I would still take that as a slight win, because 2 years ago it would have been zero voted to ban it. So the Overton window is changing. Things are moving our way. This is on the back burner for many people, but it will come up. It will come up priorities. You said something that blew me away, and I can't get out of my mind now. That's why I want to talk about it now. You said this is the grooming gang scandal for animals. And once you said that, it all made sense. This is exactly what it is. This is the breaking of the law, the suffering of, in this case, animals, where everybody knows what's going on, but no one's got the balls or the backbone to do anything about it in case they're called racist, in case they get attacked, and everybody again is looking out for their careers and their pensions, and nobody wants to do the job we're paying them to do. This is spot on. I think this is a grooming gang scandal for animals.
Well, it's also the same thing. Immediately you bring it up, you get all the lobbies. Oh, well, we've got this many exports, etc., and we're exporting, and it will affect all of this. And there were very few halal videos possible. There's nothing really on YouTube. There is one which I have a link to, and I don't think that was even shot in this country. That was shot in Belgium. But it's just horrifying. I mean, you started off by talking that we are a country of animal lovers, and you can't buy one guinea pig to live on its own because it's cruel. You have to buy two from a pet shop. You can't buy a goldfish to go into a non-aerated tank, even though goldfishes have been living for 10 years in non-aerated tanks.
You're not allowed to cut the tails off dogs or clip their ears. That's all illegal.
Yeah, but the agony of these animals and their eyes rolling and struggling and falling down and getting back up again is just horrible. Absolutely horrible. I mean, I can't watch it. And again, I mean, going back to horses, for example, there have been a number of scandals where, I mean, there's a Mark Todd is an New Zealand Olympic gold medalist, and there's a picture of him where he gets a birch and he hits this horse's bottom 4 or 5 times. Do you remember the one to get it to jump in the water? And it was the biggest scandal ever. This horse, right? And I mean, compared to what they're doing to other animals, these animals, it's just amazing. And Waitrose has been brought up on it twice already. It was brought up in 210 and it was brought up into the newspapers in 215. And they wind themselves in complete knots with their arguments. Um, so yeah, I mean, I plan to write to all the supermarkets and I'm going to ask a very simple question. What percentage of your meat is religiously slaughtered? Or what percentage of your meat has its throats cut?
I realized this was becoming a problem maybe 5 years ago. And I was the only fast food place I quite like is KFC. I don't go to the burger places. I don't do it. Every once or twice a year, I'll get a KFC and thoroughly enjoy it. And I read 5 years ago, all their chickens are halal. And I thought to myself, God, that's strange, unless they're trying to get Muslim clients. And then about 3 weeks ago, I put on Twitter that I'd just been to Nando's. And then someone said to me, "Why are you going there, Nick? It's all halal." And it's like, it's halal everywhere. And we don't even know we're eating it. And if I knew it was halal, at least I'd make an informed choice then, because I don't want to be eating halal. And it's,
Well, they will argue it's not halal because it's been stunned, or often we know it hasn't. It's the issue is that it actually is not satisfying anybody because the strict Muslims say that's not halal.
but I would say the majority of Muslims use that as, oh, I can eat it then, because KFC and Nando's are usually full of Muslim looking people. I don't know if they are Muslims.
Schools in Birmingham and places that are 98% Muslim that are actually having certified halal now.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Um, but but the important point from the law is that you cannot have this intermediate religious slaughter or pseudo slaughter, a pseudo halal. You either have to it's so clear. It's by Muslims for Muslims only, and for by Jews for Jews. The Jewish stuff is interesting because it's a very small amount of meat, but the other piece at the back part goes back into the food chain. And then you started getting to some other interesting things, not related to halal, but related to DEFRA making money um, from TB cattle. So there was one piece of meat I sent brought to a farmer, which was the Waitrose Essentials beef. And he said, well, that is a slaughterhouse that does TB slaughter. And if you look at DEFRA's accounts, and I know we're slightly diverging, but it's in the same scheme of horrible stuff going on in slaughterhouses. DEFRA makes many millions from selling cattle that have been condemned, that they paid farmers very little and then sold it to Waitrose. If the cattle, I believe, has less than 5 lesions, they put it back into the food chain, unmarked.
We're eating we're eating beef that had TB.
Correct. And that the farmer was paid very little because it wasn't TB enough. It was only minor. And similarly with the Jewish stuff, that they've only taken the front part, the back part goes back into the food chain as well, unmarked.
This this is crazy. I'm so happy I spoke to her. I understand this so much better now than I did before. How can people find out more about this? How can they help you?
I have to get my website up, which I need to get my crowdfunding up, which I hope to do soon. And then the website is going to be called the Screams of the Lambs, not the Silence of the Lambs. Yeah.
Well, what I'll do is I'll put your X account in the description of the video, because if people follow you there, they'll find out what's going on and can start following other things as well.
And you also have to understand that 2.5 months ago, I didn't know anything about this.
Wow. So it's, yeah.
Never in 100 years did I expect the percentages. I mean, I guess I thought it was 10, 20%. Maybe I didn't even think about it, but it was when I did all that, we spreadsheeted it, got all the analysis. We've done it by volume and we've done it by type. So if you do it by type, for example, I mean, I'll get one chicken leg, one whole chicken, one piece of lamb, you know, one top side, one rump steak, one sirloin steak, whatever. Yeah. Um, you're not getting it in proportion to how much will be sold because chicken is sold in such great volumes compared to anything else. But interestingly, whether I did it by type, one packet at the time, or I and myself and another friend, we were actually counting packets. So stood I had a friend who stood for 3 hours counting chicken packets. So, there's 750 chicken packets here and of that or whatever. The results were similar. They were between 65% and 75%. And then there were unmarked things. So then we had the issue of what do we do with the unmarked stuff? So then I did an iteration from assume the unmarked stuff is the same as the percentages of the other stuff. But either way, whatever analysis we did or method we did, we came up with the same result, which was basically 70%.
It's the same problem everywhere you look in the UK, especially government. We keep thinking that they're doing their job. We keep thinking that in some places they must be competent, in some departments they must be adhering to the law and they've got our best interests at heart. And every time, no matter where we look, every single time we find out they're not, they've not got our best interest. They're not doing their job. They're lazy, they're incompetent, they're scared, they're cutting corners. And it's everywhere we're looking, Catherine. It's everywhere.
I saw your tweet about the house being given to an illegal. And I mean, it's just terrible. It's in Devon, it's in the rural places, it's in Norfolk, it's everywhere. People sleeping in, we've got the people sleeping in cars, people sleeping in vans, people who are working who can't find places to live, hundreds of tenants wanting every single place. And the other thing is very new is like, the 60-year-old in an HMO or 50-year-old in an HMO. I mean, this is really new. But so many, oh dear,
No, I can hear you, I can see you.
so many people, I've lost you, but so many people can't find housing.
Yeah. 15 years ago, when I was working on the streets trying to get homeless people off the streets, 15 years ago, if you was over 50, we would smile because we knew we could get you accommodation that day and get you into into these complexes that were over 50, over 55, because they always had vacancies. Today, there's not a vacancy anywhere for any type of social housing, but illegal migrants come over, and like that guy I tweeted about today, he gets a house given to him that looks better than my house. His kitchen looks amazing, and he's illegal. It's like the country is a basket case.
What people don't realize is he's got a house somewhere else. If he's 25, 30, he hasn't been living in the street. I can go to Pakistan, I can go to Somalia, I can go to all sorts of places, and I've traveled extensively. These people could own an apartment building for all you know in Kathmandu. They have houses, they have mothers, fathers, sisters, brothers, aunts. They lived somewhere. They were not living on the street. They had money. They had money to get to France, to pay people. These are not indigent villagers. They have houses.
Exactly. Before we go off topic, let's end on this. What is the advice you give people who now understand pseudo halal and all that a bit better? What's your advice to them? Is there anything they can do themselves?
Well, what you can do is you can look for the 4-digit code on the front or the back of the packet of fresh meat. You have to accept that foreign meat or ready meals, you haven't got a clue where it's coming from. The same with takeaways. But if you're buying fresh meat, you should ignore the red tractor. You should ignore Waitrose and the co-op. There will be no better than Iceland or some cheap as Aldi or Lidl, and you can try to search the code. Sometimes it's difficult, but search the code and see what it says, and it will say religious slaughter. And so you can buy the 30% that isn't.
Catherine, thank you. And if people started doing that, and that's what people demanded, these supermarkets and these shops would start buying in more non-halal meat because no one was buying it. So we can, just like we've driven the conversation with political parties around mass migration, we can also drive this conversation with businesses because they only want our money. And if we show them what we want and what we won't put up with, they will change their ways.
Well, I think what I will do as well is I will put up, obviously, we don't have a comprehensive list. We only have a list of the codes that we found on our sampling, and they often change the codes. But I have a list of the codes that I've been sampling, probably about 100 codes, and you can check off against those codes. And I will have worked out whether that is traditional or religiously slaughtered. So yeah, I will try to put that up on Twitter.
Yep. So everyone watching, if you want to know more about this, go in description, follow Catherine on Twitter, and she's going to be putting lots more information out there until her website's ready, and then have a look at the website. Catherine, thank you so much for coming on today. I thoroughly enjoyed that. And I need to find people now for the other things I don't know much about. Thank you so much and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you very much. Thank you.